I will be honest, I am a little apprehensive about the movie. I always have been, really. But I've been keeping it down because so far everything we've seen has just looked so encouraging about how it's going to be. But even so, I've always had that little hint of a thought in the back of my mind of, what if I'm being taken for a ride? What if the movie isn't as good as it looks? What if it doesn't live up to all the hype? And that's perfectly natural. That exists with pretty much every movie out there. I've just been able to keep that part of me in check because, as I said, it all looks amazing. But now that the day's actually here and I'm going to go see the movie, it's starting to boil back up. Because there is that sense that it's happening now. I spent 5 years basically just sort of anticipating what might come, and then I spent the better part of a year thinking everything I'm seeing and hearing is amazing. Now we're actually here, and the apprehension is starting to get to me. That doesn't mean I'm not looking forward to the movie, though, of course. And of course I should specify my apprehension has nothing to do with the recent reviews. In fact, if I'm being perfectly honest, the sudden deluge of negative reviews that came about and the low Rotten Tomatoes score that happened right before the movie comes out, it strikes me as odd, considering that everything we've heard up to this point from people who got advanced screenings and whatnot had mostly positive things to say. I don't know, it strikes me as kind of unusual that we would suddenly get this negativity all at once. I won't go so far as to say it was some sort of coordinated strike of some sort. I don't necessarily want to think it's a conspiracy theory, although it's difficult not to think that given recent events regarding other movies, but it does still feel kind of suspicious. Even so, I won't dwell on that for very long. The fact is, those reviews don't really bother me at all. Well, I mean, they don't discourage me. They do bother me because really it just serves as a reminder of where Godzilla stands in terms of critical reception. There's been this huge back and forth going on ever since the RT score was revealed, that critics don't know anything, or it's just Rotten Tomatoes that you can't trust, or you have to give the critics some leeway because they serve a purpose. For my own part, I don't trust any of those professional reviews that have come out so far, simply because it's my experience and my observation that professional critics hate Godzilla on principle. There are some people in the reviewing and critical circles who do give Godzilla positivity, but the general thing that unites them all is that they are already fans. Fans of this stuff can see the artistry, see the technique, see the themes. But when it comes to being the sort of professional critics, I won't go so far as to say snobs necessarily, but some of them certainly would qualify. When it comes to them, the general consensus is that there are no good Godzilla movies. The only Godzilla movie that pro critics will ever speak positively of is the 1954 original. And even then, they do so begrudgingly. They feel like they kind of have to because, you know, it's got cultural significance, and you can sort of say the same thing with Shin Godzilla as of late. But even with those two, they're always sure to make mention of such phrases as bad English dubbing, and cheap special effects, and schlock, and all those other things that are negative and serve to remind people what they really think about this series as a whole, which is that on the whole, it has no value at all. The movies are bad even when they're good. Just like I said in Godzilla vs. Humanism. It's a slap and a kiss every single time. And that's what we're seeing repeated with this latest batch of reviews for King of the Monsters. They're not just speaking poorly of the movie specifically, they're speaking poorly of Godzilla as a whole. And that just is a big old reminder of what people really think. All of that stuff, all of that negativity of the entire genre, basically, it tells me that those critics already had their minds made up. They knew they weren't going to like this movie going in, and they knew they were going to give it bad reviews. They just needed to know a few details to build those bad reviews around. So when I say I don't trust the critics' reviews, that's the reason why. And of course, I don't trust the Rotten Tomatoes score either. I think Rotten Tomatoes is a bad joke that's gone on for too long and too many people have taken seriously. But I can tear that apart another day. The truth of the matter is, I don't expect Godzilla King of the Monsters to be perfect, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't expect any movie to be perfect, because no movie is perfect. Heck, no work of art is perfect. There are some that come close, but they'll always fall short, because there really is no such thing as true perfection within this material world. All I expect is what I expect of any film. I want the positive stuff in King of the Monsters to stick in my mind more than the negative stuff. I want the positive stuff to outweigh the negative stuff. If it can do that, I call that a good film. If it doesn't, I call it a bad film. But ultimately, that's all I need. I don't necessarily want Godzilla King of the Monsters to be some sort of rich and deep film. If it is, that's great. But as long as it's entertaining, that I would call a win. Despite my apprehension, I do think I'm going to enjoy this movie. I'm usually pretty good at spotting when red flags come up. I spotted the couple for Shin Godzilla, I spotted a lot of them for the Godzilla anime trilogy, I spotted a few for the Hellboy reboot, but I haven't seen any for King of the Monsters. It's possible I just missed them. I am only human. Like movies themselves, I am not perfect. I am prone to mistakes. But I've been paying such close attention and following the news so closely, while still avoiding spoilers, that I'm fairly certain I haven't missed them. But if I have, or if I've just been misled, I will be honest with you. I just don't think that's going to be the case. And I certainly hope it's not the case. I've already enjoyed 2 MonsterVerse movies. Odds are in favor of me enjoying the 3rd one as well. And I certainly hope I do. Looking at the time, it seems I should be heading to the theater right about now. Well, straight ahead I go. I'll see you all again once I've seen the movie and can give you my full review. Here goes nothing. The critics know nothing. That's the short version. I admit, for the briefest of moments, I considered faking you guys out, coming in here all mopey and depressed and going, 5 years of waiting for the worst Godzilla movie ever, terrible film, worst movie of 2019, save your money. But no, you guys have had enough of that. The exact opposite is true. Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 is great. It is definitely a contender for my favorite movie of the year. You know what? Maybe it will be my favorite movie of the year. It probably is going to be. I mean, what other options are there at this point? Aladdin? I already saw that back in the 90s, and it was good then. It's not going to be any better this time. No. Godzilla King of the Monsters is where it's at, folks. Without getting into spoilers, I really do think this movie is amazing. I mean, the trailers were certainly building it up as amazing. And for once, the trailers weren't lying. This was such great stuff. Every single moment that the monsters are on screen is amazing. There is some consistency in terms of cinematography with Godzilla 2014, insofar as there's a lot of stuff that's shot in such a way to really emphasize how big they are. A lot of shots from the ground up, or from inside of buildings, or from vehicles as they are fleeing from the monsters. Not all of it is like that, but there are shots in there like that to maintain the consistency between the films. Nothing wrong with that at all. It still really works. It still really makes you feel every single moment there on screen. Now, to address what a lot of the critics were saying didn't work about the movie, you've heard it all by now, I'm sure. The characters aren't developed enough. Vera Farmiga's character has confusing motivations. The plot is convoluted. Lies. Filthy, disgusting lies. I do not know what these people were smoking, but I do not see any of it. As far as the plot being convoluted, no, the plot's not convoluted. It is straightforward. It is easy to follow. It's not a basic plot. It's not like it's a children's book or something, but you shouldn't have any problems following it. You want a convoluted plot? Avengers Endgame has you covered. You want a straightforward plot? Godzilla King of the Monsters is where you go. I don't see how you could have any problem following it. For Vera Farmiga's character, Dr. Emma Russell, having confusing motivations that don't make sense, well, that's the point. Again, no spoilers, but that's the point. Her motivations aren't supposed to be completely logical. And in a weird kind of paradoxical way, that makes sense for her character. She's not acting on logic. She's not really thinking rationally here. She is flawed. Oh Lord, don't tell me that's the problem. Anyway, not going down that rabbit hole. As far as the human characters not being incredibly developed, I will admit they are simple characters. They are not especially nuanced. They are not one note either, mind you. Certainly not as one-dimensional and uninteresting as characters from certain other films I could name. But they're also not multi-dimensional either. They are, much like the plot, straightforward. In fact, you could say they are about as well developed as your average secondary characters in a story. And again, that's the point. The monsters are the main characters. The human cast, they're the secondary characters. The movie is actually about Godzilla and Ghidorah and Rodan and Mothra. They are the stars. They are the main characters, the primary protagonists and antagonists. The humans, they are there to support that story. A story that is focused on the monsters. And the monsters are fully realized characters. You can tell what each one is thinking by their body language, their expressions. Ghidorah, I mean, my goodness. Each head has a personality for the first time. But of course, Godzilla is our primary, and he gets some great stuff. Again, when these two go head-to-head next year, like O'Shea Jackson said, Kong had better bring his A-game because Godzilla is vicious in this movie. It's impressive. And the music. Bear McCreary's soundtrack is just, I mean, you've probably heard it already because it was released digitally. Every single track is on the Water Tower Records YouTube page. CD's coming out very soon. But this music is great in its own right, mind you, but it's made to go along with the visuals. And you have not truly experienced the soundtrack until you've experienced it within the movie. It's one thing to hear a new version of Godzilla's theme or Mothra's song, but it's another thing entirely to hear it when you see Godzilla and Mothra on screen. That's when the real magic happens. That's when you know that the audio and the visual fit together perfectly. Getting back to the characters for just a minute, this just occurred to me. There's not a single bad performance in the whole movie. Whether it's the human actors who are playing the human characters, or it's the mocap actors playing the monsters, it's all amazing performances. They are all giving good performances. Whether the characters are nuanced or not is immaterial because the acting is top-notch. They are really taking this seriously. They are really putting their all into it. And you can tell they are trying to make the best possible movie they can. Everyone involved tried to make the best possible movie they could, and they succeeded. They did a phenomenal job. This movie can quite possibly be the best film of 2019, as I already said, and I am hoping that it really does well. I'm sorry, folks, but the critics really are clueless here. I don't know what movie they saw, but it was not Godzilla King of the Monsters. Either that, or they already knew they were going to hate Godzilla King of the Monsters going in, and just decided to see it only so they could get the details. But do not listen to them. It's weird. I normally don't get apprehensive before I see movies, like I mentioned earlier in this video. The only times I seem to do that is when Godzilla is involved. And that apprehension, as far as this movie goes, is completely gone. I am probably going to see this movie in theaters again at least one more time, possibly more, I don't know. But it is definitely worth seeing in the theater. It's worth seeing over and over again. And yes, I will be going into spoilers in the weeks to come, but not in this video. Right now, I'm just gonna leave it at where I've left it, which is to say that Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 is amazing. Best movie of 2019 so far, possibly will be the best of them all, and just a darn good Godzilla movie to boot. There you have it. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.